Hey folks, welcome back to Pop Retro. Pop Retro 1 at Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook. Facebook.com/PopRetro1. It's Halloween season and it's just a couple days till Halloween, so wanted to take a quick look at a DVD release from Mill Creek Entertainment. And this is not Friday the 13th, but it is instead 13 Fanboy. But you notice there is the number 13 in there, so there is something to do with that. Some fans love you to death because, see, this is actually a 2021 low-budget indie meta slasher, and it was directed by Deborah Voorhees, who, that's actually her real name. Her last name is Voorhees, just like Jason Voorhees. But she was actually in one of the Friday the 13th films back in the 80s. And she is actually the director and co-producer of this 2021 film. And the cool part about it is that many actors who took part in Friday the 13th movies of the past are in this. So somehow she was able to round a bunch of them up to do this, quick little low-budget slasher, basically. And the plot's simple, okay? Essentially what you got is you have a fan, okay? The fanboy. And the fanboy, this is the person, you see the mask there. This obsessed fan, he's obsessed with Friday the 13th movies, and he's so obsessed that he's decided to start knocking off, killing former actors who played parts in films of the Friday the 13th franchise. And so, of course, the survivors, the people who survive, have to figure out who the bad guy is and bring his reign of terror to an end. And so Dee Wallace stars. Now, Dee Wallace was not ever in a Friday the 13th movie, but she is like the main star. And her best friend, she actually plays herself. In fact, most of the actors actually play fictionalized versions of themselves. So Dee Wallace is best friends with Deborah Voorhees, her character, her fictionalized version of herself. And when Deborah is killed 13 years earlier, it's seen by this little girl, the granddaughter, played by Hayley Greenbauer, okay? She grows up, and she is now the indie horror actor. And so it's 13 years later, of course, 13. And this chick, Kelsey, played by Hayley Greenbauer, she sort of gets caught up in the middle of this killing spree. And between her and Dee Wallace, they kind of have to figure out just what the heck's going on and who the killer actually is. And that's part of the fun of it, is trying to guess which one of these characters is the killer, of course. So without further ado, though, here is the cast, okay? I've got my notes in front of me. And these are the people that show up in 13 Fanboy that were involved in Friday the 13th movies of the past. We've got Deborah Voorhees as herself. She was Tina in Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, back in 1985. C.J. Graham is along as himself. He portrayed Jason Voorhees in Part 6, Jason Lives, in 1986. Kane Hodder plays himself. Now, Hodder, of course, played Jason on numerous occasions, and he's the one that, most people, when they think of Jason Voorhees, who's the actor that played him, that's who they think of, is Kane Hodder. Judie Aronson plays herself. She looks great. She's almost 60 here, but she looks about 25 years younger. And she was Samantha in Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, 1984. Lar Park Lincoln, who's one of my favorites. I even remember her from her stint on Knots Landing back from the late 80s to the early 90s. And she was Tina Shepard in Part 7, The New Blood, back in 1988. Tracie Savage plays herself, and she was Debbie in Part 3 in 1982. Ron Sloan, who played Junior, he's in this, playing himself. And he was in A New Beginning, 1985. Drew Leighty as Chris. Leighty, he was a character named Kyle in a film called Never Hike Alone in 2017. It was a Friday the 13th fan film. And so Leighty was in that. And Vincente DiSanti was the producer-director of that fan film, Never Hike Alone. He's also in this. So he plays, both of them play small parts in 13 Fanboy. Corey Feldman is here. Feldman plays, not himself, but he plays a sort of this pervert scuzzball film director, film producer. And Feldman's just fun. I mean, he's just kind of an odd guy anyway. So he's along, and he, of course, played young Tommy in 1984's The Final Chapter. And then finally, let's see here. Who am I leaving? Am I leaving anybody out? Jennifer Banko. She played young Tina in Part 7, The New Blood. So she played like Lar Park Lincoln as a little girl back in The New Blood. And she's in this as an adult too. So that's like 10 people. That's like 10 actors, 10 characters, whatever, all playing fictional versions of themselves. And many of them getting knocked off along the way by whoever is behind the mask. Now, the film is sort of just this nice little placeholder for Friday the 13th fans. If you're not aware, there's been some sort of lawsuits, litigation, behind-the-scenes stuff that has been going on for the past 5 years or so. And there hasn't been a Friday the 13th movie in the franchise since 2009. It was the reboot, Friday the 13th. Was the name of it. It was just a reboot film. And so we're going on 13 years. 13 years since we've had a Friday the 13th movie. And that litigation had to do with Sean Cunningham, the director and producer of the original film, the first Friday the 13th, back in 1980. He was at odds with Victor Miller, who was the screenwriter for that film. And so somehow they've been going at it, and I think there was some decision has been made, like the litigation's over, but still, you can look it up online, but it's just it seems like the rights, the way that the courts have sort of dispersed them, make it very difficult for one person to go out, one of these people to go out and make another Friday the 13th movie without the other person's approval of certain aspects of the Friday the 13th franchise. So because of that, you get nothing, but thankfully, Deborah Voorhees and Desk Pop Entertainment created a 13 Fanboy. So you can at least check out these actors, some of the old favorites from way back in the day. And what's also nice about this movie is, because everybody's like middle-aged or elderly aged, because it's been between 30 and 40 years ago that most of these actors played their parts in those original Friday the 13th movies. And so what's nice about this movie is Director Voorhees has embedded like on-screen graphics. Whenever the character, the actor first is on screen, they put a little graphic at the bottom telling you what their name is and which Friday the 13th movies they appeared in. So, which is great, because sometimes it's like, do I recognize that person? And that sort of thing. And so it gives you a nice little nostalgic push. And so that's what made it fun. I mean, otherwise it's just kind of it's a low budget indie slasher movie. And, if you have friends that aren't into Friday the 13th, they're probably not going to like it. They're probably going to say it sucks or whatever. But if you're a fan of low budget horror, if you're a fan of indie horror, if you're a fan of modern indie horror, if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th series, then I think you'll enjoy this. And Mill Creek has released it on DVD, not Blu-ray, but DVD. And I think you can find it in places on streaming. I think it was first released to video on demand platforms back in 2021. There's a look at the back. Try to get some glare off of there for you. You can kind of see Feldman there in the middle. And some of the scenes from the movie. And a look at the disc. So there you have it, 2021's 13 Fanboy. See if you can guess who the killer is before the movie ends, because there's a lot of suspects and some good red herrings. And I thought they put in some good twists in that last third of the movie when I thought I knew, who's actually behind the killings. And then all of a sudden, hey, there's some twist and turn I didn't see coming. So made it a lot of fun to sit down and watch these and catch up with some of these old characters. So 13 Fanboy, Mill Creek Entertainment. Thanks for watching, and I will be back soon with some more haul videos and more reviews before you know it.